So we are Red Card Gambling Support Project in association with Pro Performance UK. So what we're going to be doing over the next few months is delivering podcasts, educational podcasts, all related around gambling harms, various different topics around gambling harms, and just to get people's input and to see what we can do in terms of educating people and raising awareness for problem gambling and gambling harms. So today we'll touch upon 2 or 3 topics. We'll have an update for Red Card in terms of where we are today, what plans we've got going forward. And everyone could just have an input. So I think we'll start off with introductions, because although us 4 don't know each other, 3 of us do. So we'll start with introductions, and we'll start. Harry, you can just introduce yourself first.
My name is Harry. I'm 26. I'm the director of 2 companies working within the sport industry, a not-for-profit company and a limited company working predominantly in youth sport. I have suffered or had problems with gambling over the last few years, starting from when I was at university and just starting off as it being a little bit of fun when I was at university, and then getting more and more involved, and probably became a bit of an issue for me when I had quite a decent win at one point, won a substantial amount of money, and then obviously thought that I was going to be able to continue to do that. Started to lose, took out loans and borrowed money and things like that, and got myself into quite serious debt for somebody of my age. I've just been on my recovery journey, and have recently started to work with Tony at Red Card, and just looking forward to trying to turn what's been a negative for me into a positive by helping educate young people on the dangers that can be there with gambling.
Thanks, Harry. Over to you, Ben.
I'm Ben. I'm part of the Red Card team. So similar to Harry, I started gambling when I was at university, sports betting mainly, and I just never stopped until I was around 30 years old. And as I left uni and entered the world of work, and I earned more money, it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I was in crippling financial debt, and felt like I had no option but to commit crime to fund my gambling, because it had that strong a pull over me that I just started to steal money to gamble with. But I haven't gambled now in 3 years, and I work within the industry, helping people to enter recovery and start treatment programs. So that's me.
Thanks, Ben. So Terry, obviously myself and you have met him many times, done a little bit of work together. So obviously Harry and Ben have met you before.
Yeah. Okay. So I've over 5.5 years gamble free. I turned my life around. I reached the rock bottom. The 3 rock bottoms, basically, I should have gone to jail 22 years ago. I was a psychiatric nurse and I stole money from a patient. I within the last 11 years, I've been on the streets twice and attempted suicide twice. But 5.5 years ago, I managed to turn things around fully. And it's now my mission in life to stop people going through what I went through and put other people through. So I'm now started a self-help group in the Northwest, based around Preston, called Gambling Harms Northwest Alliance. And so I've done quite a bit of work with various groups up and down the country, including obviously Red Card. And I focus on the recovery side and the treatment side, but also in the education side. I've developed recently what I describe as the Idiot's Guide to the Gambling Addiction Spectrum, just to make it easier for people who don't understand it to get a clearer picture. But we've also developed a clear care pathway for both the gambler and the affected other. So yeah, that's me in a brief few words.
Thanks for that, Terry. I think it's really important, and that's one other reason why I wanted to get you on, because as you're probably aware by now, we've built our model on lived experience. So the whole of the Red Card team, in terms of the facilitators and 1 or 2 other members, come from a lived experience background. So I think, you know, it's really brave of you and honest of you to share your story with us and those that are listening. And I think in terms of what you do, Terry, that's an important aspect of the whole gambling addiction journey, because, you know, it's only today I was just saying to Harry that I don't usually go on Twitter a lot, but I found myself on there today, and it can get a little bit toxic. And one of the things that was being discussed was self-regulation, and how self-regulation is, well, the system that's in place is flawed in terms of bookmakers and online self-exclusion in terms of GamStop, etc. So, you know, that recovery pathway, that sustainability of recovery. Let me just ask you a question, Terry.
Sure.
About that, yeah?
Yeah.
So would you say that in terms of, you know, self-exclusion, in terms of those that are suffering gambling harms, those that have, you know, problems with gambling, that want to stop, that want to change their life, that want to move on, do they have their own personal responsibility to, you know, put those self-exclusion and self-regulation tools in place?
Well, they do. I basically, you know, because I also have run Preston Gamblers Anonymous for the last 5 years as well. So when I get people as a first point of contact, I will always ask them 3 questions. The first one being, do you think you've got a problem? Because quite often they will be attending to appease partners, family, whoever.
Yeah.
The second thing I ask them is, do you think that this gambling disorder has got you beat? And then the third thing I ask them, which is the most important question, is, are you prepared to work at your recovery? Because I had a friend who genuinely said to me one day, the only thing that's going to stop me is if they bring a pill out that will stop me gambling. And I said, well, let me know when that comes out, because we'll go into business and we'll make a fortune.
Yeah.
Because the only way that I know of stopping is by, you know, the only person who's going to stop Terry from gambling is Terry at the end of the day. You know, so what we do is we give them the tool, we help them to start their recovery. But at the end of the day, the thing that I've discovered is that everybody's recovery is individual to them, and they've got to find out what works for them. And a lot of cases, you know, it's a complex illness, and so consequently, you know, there's lots of people, you know, what works for me might not work for you, what might work for Harry, etc. So it's a case of educating people, giving them the tools, and letting them find out what works for them. And in some cases, you know, they haven't got the capacity to turn things around immediately, but at least they know, you know, where to go when they are ready, if you like, and when the penny.
Yeah. I think you're right there in terms of recovery. Recovery is different for everybody. You know, my recovery was, you know, probably 3 or 4 different aspects, whether it was family support, whether it was counselling, you know, putting my self-exclusion tools in place, self-regulation tools in place. So lots of different ways our people recover. But I just think that, you know, if someone's self-excluded themselves from, let's say, from the online gambling sites or from land-based bookmakers, and then they, you know, decide after a couple of weeks, you know, I want to start gambling again, you know, surely that individual, like you just said, the only person that can really change is the individual. So if they're going to, you know, self-exclude and then 2 weeks later want to start gambling, you know, they're either not ready, or there could be other mitigating circumstances in terms of what's going on in their life.
I think it's about the individual being ready. And I think when I first kind of came clean to my mum right at the start that I was having some issues, I self-excluded myself from all online bookmakers. But I think more than anything, I was actually like just doing it to show my mum that I'd done it, so that she would believe that I wasn't going to be gambling, even though I didn't know, because I continued to gamble by using one of my friends' accounts.
Right. So okay, Harry, that's a good point, and that's what I was getting at. So on that point, yeah, you continue to gamble. You've done it like Terry mentioned earlier, you know, to appease you know, the fact that you continue to gamble, you have to take some responsibility for that.
Yeah, 100%.
Continue to gamble even though you're self-asleep. Yeah, yeah, okay. Because that's where there's a lot of debate out there where people are just, you know, lambasting the operators, the tactics, all that kind of stuff, which we know, you know, what the operators doing out there. We know what the systems that are out there are in place, and some of them flawed. So yeah, we get that. We know the contributing factors, but you know, there has to be, in my opinion anyway, and as you've just sort of mentioned, some, you know, responsibility from the individual gambler.
Yeah, I think definitely it's important to highlight that, but I think also, you know, as we say, it is a complex illness, and I think you don't want to put too much pressure on each individual because everyone's journey is different. And you know, for me at that point, I self-excluded, but I probably wasn't ready or wasn't fully understanding of what my addiction was. Whereas now, I understand the reasons why I gambled, and because I understand why I was gambling, now I don't feel like I'm as likely to ever go back because I understand the reasons. Whereas that point, it was just like, right, if I say that I've self-excluded, then my mum will believe that I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Even though at the point when I self-excluded, that probably wasn't what I was trying to do. I wasn't lying, but I wasn't fully, you know, I hadn't fully come to terms with actually that it was a serious problem, maybe.
Yeah. Ben, do you get many people within your line of work in the industry that have self-excluded, that, you know, are, you know, continue to gamble, etc.?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, most people, I think a lot of people recover in a cycle of when they first come into recovery, put GAM stop in place, put GAM ban in place, and it will be fine. But what they find is that you know, sometimes that it might be after 6 months when the exclusion's ended, or sometimes it might be after a couple of months.
Yeah,
having those blocks in place is not enough. It slows you down. It's a barrier, but what happens then is, you know, you can always find a way around it. So which is why we always say it's so important to not just focus on one thing, one aspect, one block. It's about putting lots of little things in place to help with your recovery, and these practical things that self-exclude you, they're really useful at slowing you down to thinking, right, if I need to gamble, I can't just go on, log in and place a bet. I need to find a different account, or I need to find a way around it. And the thinking is that in that time that it takes you to find out workarounds, you come to your senses and use your support network, whether it's GA or your family or counselling, whatever it is, to kind of take that personal responsibility. So yeah, I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make is relying on those practical blockers and thinking that'll be all they need.
Yeah, and just on that back of that, sorry, Terry, on the back of that, you know, we know we've all been there. Yeah, so we know what it feels like to have a problem with gambling. We know what it feels like, the fact that it consumes you on a daily basis. So, you know, gamblers will find a way. You just mentioned about GamStop and GamBan. You know, I've done a lot of research in terms of GamStop and these self-exclusion services that are out there, and you know, there are ways around these barriers. And if you're consumed by gambling and you're really not ready to change, and you're really not ready to address it and stop, then you will find a way to gamble. So it's not bulletproof. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, one of the things that, if you like, has evolved as I've kind of developed the recovery package for people is that, as we were saying, it's a complex issue, and it's something inevitably that you've been doing for quite a while. So you've got those addictive tendencies that are, you know, going to come back, and when they do, you know, when the craving for the dopamine hit is there, nothing's going to stop you. You know, so as Ben just said before, basically those blocks and barriers are the first step to give you the thinking time. Now, when you break down gambling into, you know, I describe it as the fire triangle, and you've got to break up the fire triangle. I call it the gambling cycle. So there's 3 aspects that need to happen for you to gamble. You need to have access to money. Yeah. You need to have access to some form of gambling establishment or site, and you need time.
Time, yeah.
Yeah. So the two easiest to deal with, if you like, are access to money and GamStop and GamBan that Sven just alluded to, as did Harry, and they are the ones to help give you the thinking time, as I call it, to think, do I really want to do this? In other words, giving the cognitive part of the brain the opportunity to say, common sense here, lads, does this work out well for me? Is it something I can afford to do? Is it something that will stand me in good stead moving forward? Yeah. So they are some of the first steps, and they are something that they need to work along so that you can then, the hardest part to deal with is the time. So in other words, and I call it the thinking time. So it's the time when you're either thinking about planning, actually gambling, or inevitably, in our cases, covering up from, excuse my French, from the poo when you've finished gambling. Yes. So that's the thing. The hardest part to deal with is the time aspect and the thinking about. And the hardest aspect that we educate people about is finding something that's going to be strong enough to resist those urges when they come along, when the time takes hold. And so, those barriers in place, we can all find ways around them. And if you want to gamble, you'll find a way of gambling. Yeah. Whether it's taking it out in your mother's name, or doing it in your mate's name, or going out of town if you've excluded yourself from the local bookies.
Yeah. Offshore accounts, all that stuff. Yeah. Offshore betting sites.
Yeah. We've got to be realistic with people and say, that's just a step to give you the thinking time. It's not going to stop you, and it's not going to be the be all and end all. A lot of people, when they put those blocks and barriers in place, and they go a month without gambling or whatever, it goes. And a lot of people today are what I call payday millionaires. So in other words, when the next income comes in and they're able to cope with that, they suddenly think, oh, that's it, I'm cured now. The money's sorted itself out, and and I've got these barriers in place. But I stipulate to people, the first time that you get some form of trauma, and that's where the counselling comes in. Yeah. That is when you will need to know what to do with the time, and the thinking process, and how to work through that.
Yeah, I think that's a key word there, trauma. In terms of, there will be things with people out there that self-excluded or think they're in a place where they want to be, but then something comes along that triggers that behavioural pattern again and want to start gambling. So yeah, there's lots of different reasons why that can happen. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one of the things I say, Tony, to people quite often is that, to go back to those practical tools, is they stop you gambling, but what they don't do is necessarily treat the reason why you were gambling in the first place. And most of us have those reasons, whether it's financial pressure or trauma, or when we have a bad day. So that's why it's really important to get other support that addresses the reason you're gambling in that first place.
Yeah, and I think
definitely.
And I think the important thing is, everyone's journey is different, and everyone's reasons for gambling is different. And obviously talking about self-exclusion, but also there's a lot in the press as well about adverts on TV and at football games. And I think for me, when I watch a football game and there's an advert, that's not a trigger to me personally, because it's not really the reason why I was doing it. For me, more of a trigger is if I've got a night out coming up on a weekend and I haven't got quite enough money to do what I want to do, then I think, should I have a bet to try and earn some more money? That's what my trigger was and still is. So yeah, I think it's just about realizing that everyone's journey is different in terms of what actually is going to trigger them or
slightly older. So we remember before mobile phones come in, for example, and today's technology. So now it's saturated. It's wherever you look, and it's upon you, and it's normalized.
Yeah.
And so consequently, you can't say, move yourself away from it, because it's always
in your face. Yeah.
It's about, you look at what we describe as a typical problem gambler, starts off, they will have been introduced to it in their childhood, for formative years, 5 to 10. Then during their teenage years, they will have had some form of a win. And as you've just described, Harry, so they see it as a way of making money. So therefore, when they then, start work and start earning or whatever, or getting grants if they're at uni and that sort of thing, and they're short of money, they think, well, how can I get money? What's the way that I know how to get money? Oh, yes. And when you're a teenager, you gamble without consequence. So what's the worst thing that can happen to you when you're a teenager? You might lose your dinner money. You might lose some of your pocket money, whatever. And then what do? You learn the ways to go to who do I get it off? My mum. Oh, yeah, I've lost it, mum. Blah, 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 sob story, get it back. So there's no consequence. And so when they then, move into adult life and real life hits them, and they've got to find that, budgeting needs to be accounted for. And, gambling is a false economy, but people see it as a way to making money. Exactly,
yeah, without doubt.
If I turn this 50 quid into 100 quid, I'm sorted.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is even if you turn it into 500 quid, when you reach our stage of gambling, you don't come out of the bookies with 500 quid, or you don't come offline with 500 quid. So, yeah. And that's where it shows that you've got
a problem. Yeah. I think that was an interesting point, Harry, about what triggers you in terms of, wanting to get money to go out with mates or whatever. And it's different for everyone, because there are people out there where the advertising does trigger and has an impact on their thinking and their behaviour, because that's what started them gambling.
100%. I think it's just, I think one of the things that you can take out from it is all about education and awareness to those triggers and things, because when I first started it, or when I had a problem for a long time, I wouldn't have really realized that I needed to look so deep into it to work out why I was doing it, and until I realized why and started to deal with that part of it rather than actually treating the actual gambling side of it, was the thing that probably broke it for me and made it to a point where I actually was able to recover and get to the place that I am now.
Yeah. I mean, the advertising thing, as you said, Terry, we're saturated with adverts now, airways, TV, press, social media, absolutely everywhere.
It's crazy, and I think one of the interesting things that have come out recently is, those in the gambling industry are saying that they've done research and there's no link between the adverts and the amount and an increase in people gambling. So then people are saying, well, why are you paying all of this money for these adverts if you're telling us that it actually has no effect? That doesn't ring true, does it? They obviously are paying for these adverts because they know it is going to encourage people to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying to put the adverts on.
Exactly. And you only got to look at the amount of money that's spent, by gambling companies on advertising. I think 1.4 billion, whatever it is. It's just ridiculous amounts of money that is spent specifically on gambling advertising, and they're doing that for a reason. And then you've got the target.
That's the thing that's frustrating people is, when you're trying to have reform and you're trying to change things, and you've got reports from the people in the gambling industry that are saying, well, why should we stop the adverts? It has no effect. And it's like, well, how stupid do you think we are?
Yeah, exactly.
You see, the thing that I I've been thinking quite a lot about this recently, and the thing that, if you like, that stands out for me is that you've just said there that the industry, their research suggests. Now, their research is the old adage. There's statistics and damn lies. And the bottom line is that the first mental health issue that happens to a compulsive gambler is that they become compulsive gamblers. They internalize everything and they won't, tell you the truth about their gambling. Exactly. Even after you've stopped, I find myself 4 or 5 years later where people ask me about something, and if they just can't catch me off the on the hoof, I'll lie, because that's a natural trait. to the problem gambler. And the other thing is that because the problem gambler always needs to be in control, so when you're trying to help them, so in other words, instead of internalizing everything, you want them to be open and honest about everything. Yeah. It's a totally, it's totally new to them and difficult to maintain. And that's where the support around them needs to be educated. No longer where the, I describe the people who are being affected by the problem gamblers. They're like the dog being wagged by the tail, and they're always one step behind the gambler. So that is why you can always manipulate the people who are close to you, and they become enhancers to your gambling addiction.
Yeah.
And so what I've discovered is that they need to be educated where they're one step ahead of you if they're going to be in a position to support you, so that they're not waiting to deal with what you do. They're there to say, hang on a minute, I can see you go, these are the traits that I can see you coming back to it. So that is why it's important. Now, I've noticed that if somebody, I run two groups, the Gamblers Anonymous and for the Affected Others. And if somebody has got a member in the Affected Others group, they've actually got a 66% higher chance of sustainable recovery than the person who's doing it on their own.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The people in the affected area group, I go into that group, and you look at Gamanon, for example, and they won't allow problem gamblers in their group. It's not the done thing. And I think, well, that just contradicts what's needed. So they need to know, warts and all, what you're going to do or what you've got the capacity to do and the tricks that you do, so that you will, and even if you've got the barriers in place, you will, as Harry said, you will find a way to gamble.
Yeah.
And so that is why it's important. Quite often, the strength of the people around you, and the education of those to help you maintain the sustainability of your recovery.
Yeah.
Because the gambler's instinct, once the addictive part of the brain has been stimulated, is I call it the sodic mode. In other words, something's happened. I'm going back to my old coping strategy, which is to go and gamble. And some people use it as escapism. Some people use it to make extra money if they're struggling. And that's why it is so complex. And then that is not just, you can't just have one thing. You've got to have all three. And that is why once you've got the sustainable blocks and barriers in place, that it's only at that point that the counselling, I believe, becomes useful, because you're more likely to be receptive to it.
Yeah, because you've
and Ben said, to looking at why do we do it in the first place? What are going to be the triggers that are going to send us back to it? And the third and most important thing is to adopt the CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, to make the cognitive part of the brain stronger than the addictive part of the brain, to resist the urge when it comes on.
Yeah. The most important bit about all that is that first step, actually acknowledging you've got a problem. That's the really most important thing. In terms of going back to the advertising, I think you probably noticed one thing I've noticed over the last probably 6 months to a year is because we talk about target advertising, and what I've noticed, which I didn't really, someone pointed out to me because I was obviously working on this Preventing Gambling Harms in Diverse Communities project, and then I started to sort of look properly, and what's happened over the last 12 months or so is that a lot of the gambling advertising, you started to see a diverse group of people, and lots of people from the Black and Asian community on your screens now, whereas 12 months ago, 24 months ago, that wasn't the case. So now it's all about this target marketing from the gambling operators, where they're aware of the areas of deprivation in the UK. I live in Enfield. I think we're the 64th borough in the UK, the most deprived area in the UK, and this happens all over different cities, whether it's Liverpool, whether it's Birmingham, Leicester, where there's a lot of deprivation and a lot of population from the Black and Asian community. And operators know this, operators see this, and it's just it's just disgusting the way they operate in terms of target marketing, target a certain population of people. So any other views about, people are calling for banning on advertising completely. Personally, I don't think we should be going that far in terms of banning gambling advertising per se. I don't know what anyone's views is on that. I suppose what I would say, in my opinion, because I've talked to various stakeholders about gambling advertising, and that what I would like to see is the imagery and content of gambling advertising changed. So we all see it. We all see how it's portrayed on the screen, whether it's a group of girls or a group of guys come out to the casino and they're happy and they're winning. So this perception that gambling's, fun and you win all the time and it's all rosy, they're not showing the darker side of gambling. So, I think if there was better language, better content and imagery shown, then that would balance the gambling advertising. That's where I come from. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? In terms of if they would be able to ban it completely. I suppose when you look at stuff like smoking and stuff, obviously they had. I think they've got. There's you can't advertise smoking and things like that, can you? So is it any different really? It's something which people can get addicted to and are getting addicted to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
that's interesting. Yeah, the tobacco industry, did manage to get advertising banned. But the one thing that I would say about the tobacco industry, with the advertising, is that at least they actually did provide content and imagery in terms of how dangerous smoking is. That's not the case with gambling advertising.
Yeah, I think that's the model that they used in Australia, didn't they? Where Australia is the was the worst gambling per capita country in the world, and they used the smoking model, but they also used the most, if you like, effective tool in advertising, and that is getting children to. Yeah,
I've seen one of those adverts. Yeah,
and so when it reaches the children, then people take notice.
Yeah,
and it becomes effective. If it's just the normal people, if you like, in the street, they just say, mugs are soon parted with the money, leave it with them. They don't take notice. But when it's affecting children, and children are seen to suffer, then that has a major effect, and that is why in Australia now there's no advertising or sponsorship in sport.
Yeah,
and I know we're moving towards that, but very slowly.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, because I saw one of those videos with the children actually involved in the advertising campaigns, and like you say, it hits home hard because we are talking about young people that are being impacted by gambling, not just themselves, but obviously the families. So I think it might be a way that the UK might, the ASA and all the rest of them, the DCMS and all of them, because it's got to be a collective working. So we'll see if that develops over the next few months, because I know that they're addressing gambling advertising. One second, Harry. I know they're addressing gambling advertising within the gambling app review. We're all awaiting a white paper in the next few months. So what changes are made to gambling advertising, we have to wait and see. Yeah. Go on, Harry.
I think something. Obviously, I think something definitely has to change, and there definitely is too much. You've seen the reports out recently. I think it was one of the recent FA Cup games, and how many times gambling adverts came up on the screen throughout the time that the game on, and it's something crazy. But also, I'll be listening to Talk Sport, and they'll be doing an interview with somebody who's suffered gambling issues or is highlighting change or stuff like that, and then as soon as they finish the talk, it goes to an advert about gambling. It's like, that's a bit, surely that's it's complete contradiction. Like, how can you have somebody on who's trying to educate, and then what if that person then hears the advert straight after they're on and goes back to it because of that? So I think that something's definitely got to change, but it's just working out how tough and serious they can go with it, I guess.
Obviously there's a lot of money involved. I think one secretary, one thing which is really important, which I think there's campaigns out there. We know, some of the advocates that are out there campaigning about sports advertising and gambling advertising and football. And I think that's an area that I do believe seriously needs change. We talk about the stadia betting, we talk about perimeter fencing advertising, we talk about the sponsorship with the football clubs, the shirt sponsorships. So there's a lot going on within professional football and gambling advertising, and I think that's an area where the operators, they're fully aware of the thousands or millions of young children that are into football, that go to football matches, that are talking about their heroes and their role models, etc. So I think that's an area that I think there will be some change, and hopefully there will be.
I think also it's about the tactics they use to advertise, which may not just be the adverts, but the emails that come into your email box with free bets and things like that. And there's lots of stories of people who had severe gambling addictions and were losing fortunes on their accounts, and that had even gone through GamStop and were still getting emails from online bookmakers about deals and about free bets and stuff like that. And I think those are the kind of tactics that probably need to be looked into, because again, similar to like the adverts, people in the gambling industry have said, well, the free bets don't actually have much effect on people continuing to gamble, or as much effect as people think. But again, it's the same with the adverts. Why are you giving people these free bets if it's not going to actually help? It's not going to be something that gets them back to gambling. That's the reason they're doing it, is to get them hooked again,
Yeah. They talk about robust license conditions, intervention, whatever it is. That in terms of the practices of the operators, that is something that really needs looking at. I know it's going to be it's a big topic of the consultations that have finished. But they have a lot to answer for. So as I said, it's only a matter of time. We can wait and see what that white paper looks like and what robust changes, if any, within the industry, within how the operators operate. We'll see. Yeah, you was going to say, Tel?
The reason it's been able to develop to this level of capacity is obviously government gets so much money from the industry that they're going to be very slow at introducing what I call appropriate controls, and so consequently they've been allowed to. They've got a multi-pound industry. If you put any blocks on them or try and make it difficult for them, they'll just employ the appropriate solicitors, barristers to work ways around it, so that they've got they can carry on a technicality. But we look at ourselves and we say, well, not only are the government have been slow in dealing with the industry, but it's only in the last 3.5-4 years that budgeting skills have been introduced into the schools, and it's only last September that gambling harm education has been introduced into the school curriculum.
Yeah,
I've got relatives who are teachers, and they've no idea whatsoever how to educate the kids about the gambling. And so, getting into the schools, getting it appropriate, and and being accepted, if you like, in within that, they're the gamblers of tomorrow.
Yeah,
and they're the target market. They can still see all the advertising.
Yeah,
they're not being given the support they need at school. That budgeting, needs to be important. So that it's not a way. Gambling is not a way of making money or
enhancing your life. Yeah,
and then to learn about the gambling harm is if you carry on gambling, as Ben said earlier, it will eventually lead to pathological gambling and criminality, and petty crimes start off. You look at I did some work with the Howard League last year. And the majority of people who go into prison for some form of monetary issues, whether it be theft or whatever, fraud or whatever, there's been some form of gambling in it.
Yeah,
and there's been some gambling is their way out of it, if you like, or as you see it as a way out.
Yeah, and that's that's a good example, Terry. There's lots of different examples about how gambling addiction has an impact on an individual family's life. So we've been talking to the homelessness project this week, and the same thing. Some of these people have ended up homeless due to their gambling. So, you know, when you look at the bigger picture, there's so much different types of impact that are related to gambling harms. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned about the schools. As you probably, we haven't caught up for a while to tell, but yeah, we've now gone past the 6,000 young people delivery, which is excellent for us over the last 4 years. And we, you know, we have a strong belief and passion about early intervention for young people, because as you said, Terry, you know, we've got the next young generation coming up, and if they're not educated on gambling harms, and as you said, when they leave school or when they go to uni, you know, because of what we've discussed already about the advertising promotion, some are going to get drawn into gambling, and some are going to end up like us. So yeah, early intervention is absolutely massive. Yeah. So yeah, long may that continue. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an important point, because I think, you know, when I first had my first bet at university, I don't think I really knew that you could get addicted to gambling. I didn't really know that was a thing. I don't think, even in this day and age, it wasn't something that I'd ever had spoken to me about or anything like that. So for me at that point, when I first done it, and then when it started to get increase, if I had have had some education, maybe I would have started to realize the triggers that actually, this was becoming a problem, and it would have probably meant that I could, you know, cut it out early, because if I was educated on what those triggers are, and starting to realize when it becomes a problem. I think, you know, that's the most important thing that we can do.
Definitely, Harry, because then we've talked to lots of university students that, you know, the horror stories of blowing their student grant in one night or 1 week. And I think if in your case, Harry, if you had been educated about gambling harms, you know, 16, 17, 18, then yeah, you may have been in a position where at least you understand it. You know what the perils and the pitfalls are. So yeah, it could have made a difference without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So
you see, the other aspect of that, and this goes back to the government, if you like, is that you know, you look at the multi-billion pound companies, you know, that are you know, apart from Bet365, because with all due respect, they do stay within the country and manage that. But basically, they just find a way. It's a license to print money. If they go and base themselves, you know, somewhere where there's no tax, you know, problems for them, or anybody controlling, you know, their output, if you like, of drawing people in, then, you know, they've got free scape. You know, it's the same with, you know, Starbucks not paying taxes in Britain and stuff like that. They'll find ways around it to abuse it. And, you know, it's a multi-billion pound industry. You know, look back to when it started in America, you know, with the casinos and what have you. The first thing that happened is the criminality that Ben was talking about, the mafia take over. You know, and you're then talking people's lives, you know, not just through their own stupid idiosyncrasies of you know, being addicted. It's a case of, you know, you touch the wrong people the wrong way, and you know, you're pressing the wrong buttons.
Yeah, but that's interesting. You mentioned about the tax havens, because, you know, I was reading some stuff today about this, again, back to the self-exclusion, where, you know, if someone's self-excluded from GamStop, for instance, and all that, they obviously the ways around it is by going to sites that are not UK regulated and offshore sites, and that's, you know, there is an argument that people say that, you know, if there's robust changes put in place, you know, in the review for the operators that make it harder for people to gamble, that, you know, I've heard this term so many times where people talk about going underground, and yeah, there's arguments for and against about whether gambling would go underground, but yeah, it's just an interesting topic, really.
I think the other interesting thing that I've seen this week, I'm not sure what your guys' opinion on it, but is the NHS and the fact that they're going to stop taking money from the gambling industry to fund their prevention or recovery stuff they do. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Did
they stipulate why they've decided not to take money from the industry?
I'm not sure if they've. I haven't completely looked into it enough to see that, but I think it's along the lines of trying to take control away from the gambling industry in terms of how the money's spent. Maybe, I'm not sure.
I think they said that their service users were asking questions about the funding, which I find hard to believe personally. I don't think when you're in treatment, I don't think you care whether the fund's coming from.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, I think, is it not shooting yourself in the foot, really? Because is that money not really important? I don't know.
It's Harry, as a member of the Gambling Advisory Group, a year ago, working 9 months with the Gambling Commission Advisory Group. These are one of the topics that came up in terms of, organisations or individuals taking money from the industry. There's lots for and against, lots of debates about it. You just mentioned again about the NHS, and I've always had the view that if anybody, an organisation, whether it's NHS, whoever it is, that accepts money from the industry, whether it's through donation, whether it's funding, whatever it is, if that money is going to support the Gambling Commission's new strategy of reducing gambling harm 2020, then I cannot see what the problem is, because as long as that money isn't abused in any way, but as long as that money is transparent and clear and it's being used to educate, for prevention, for treatment, whatever it's for, then I've never been one that has an issue of taking money from the industry if it's going to support what we all want, the end goals, which is basically to educate people and reduce gambling harms in the UK. So I don't know what you think, Tal.
Yeah, it's I can see both sides,
and you can go against this.
I can say it's something I've thought about, and I know Matt Gaskell's obviously come out this week and has indicated that's the way they're moving forward, and I can see. Obviously I was part of the same group as you, Tony, and some of the if you like brick walls that we were hitting, and we'd no influence basically, had we?
No.
But the bottom line is that it's what we said before. It's that the moral aspect. It becomes the chicken and the egg. What came first, and do you take money? It's like the NHS alcohol units. Are they sponsored by Heineken or Beck's or whoever? Money's money for treatment at the end of the day. That our major problem is because of the state of the if you like lack of response with the NHS up until this point, is that that is why they estimate there's approximately 400,000 problem gamblers, and only 12,500 sought help last year.
Yeah,
because you need to be focusing the NHS needs to be focusing more about how do we siphon it down to the front line, if you like, to the face. Cold face. It's all right having putting 10 specific gambling clinics around the country. If your GPs know about it and where to send people. I've been educating GPs around the Preston area, and after I'd given a talk, 2 weeks later, with 2 people come who attended that specific clinic, and had gone to the GP, and they said, "No, we don't know what to do for you." Or where to send.
Amazing, yeah.
And so unless you educate the people on the front face, your A&Es and your junior doctors and your the people who are coming in with suicidal ideation and it's gambling related, you go to your GP as a gambler because of your, if you like, the stigma of gambling. You're going to present with a depressive type illness, so they'll give you antidepressants and say, "Come back in 2 months and we'll see how you're doing." Because they don't actually look into why are you depressed. They will ask you, do you drink? Do you take drugs? But they don't ask, have you got any debt problems? Do you gamble?
Yeah.
And so
you've got the you've got your CCGs at where you are, Terry, and obviously in every city. We had a meeting with the local North London CCG recently, and it's exactly that. That was the exact thing we were discussing about. The questions never asked about are you gambling? So and that and linking that to what we're just talking about with the funding. That's where funding can come in really, really useful in terms of education for those cohort of people. So I just don't quite understand those that are against industry funding. I know they'll have their reasons, but it doesn't quite add up in terms of, you know, funding is needed for all types of different things. As I said, whether it's prevention, whether it's treatment, research, etc., you need funding.
I suppose, yeah. You know, just to be devil's advocate, also, you know, you look at it from the other angle and you say, well, you know, we look at what's happened so far, and basically, Gambling Act. You know, we were expecting it pretty much when we were working with the Commission. You know, at the end of that, and they've been dragging their feet. And the other thing is you know, major trauma like the epidemic and the, you know, COVID and what have you, and then, you know, and then people being, you know, stuck at home. That's just going to exacerbate the problem and make people more, you know, more likely to turn to it as a way out of it. And you know, and the current situation where, you know, the cost of living, and, you know, food or heating it becomes a choice instead of, you know, an option. And so that I can see this is going to just make the situation even worse. And so I can understand that the NHS is saying, well, you know, if you leave it to the government, that's brought us to where we are today. You know, why have they, you know, since 2005, not recognised the effects it's been having on the population? You know, one in 15 people are affected by people with gambling disorders. So
I think they've lost the trust in the government. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I can understand. You know, that's just giving the opposite angle, if you like. So Don't get me wrong. I don't know what's the answer today. I think it's a combination of all, and I think we need to. You know, the hardest part is getting all the right people around the table.
Well, that's
where the industry do need to be included in.
Yeah, and I've always said that. I sort of say a lot on social media in terms of, you know, everyone's got different views about, you know, different topics, regulation changes, all that stuff. You know, all the stuff we've talked about today. But I always say it has to be a real collective effort, and that includes operators, that includes lived experience, that includes, you know, researchers, everybody. You know, the ASA, DCMSS, everybody. Everyone's, like you say, everyone's got to get together and work together, because we all want the same end goal, really. You know?
Yeah, I think the main players that are not at the table at the moment, from my point of view, are the finance industry, because they're the people who find out if you've got a gambling problem first. You know, the banks, the credit unions, you know, the full face, those sort of people, they see it first, and they, you know, they use their get out of jail free card by saying, well, yeah, I can see, you know, we're not here to pass moral judgment as to your gambling habits until you want something from us. And if you want a mortgage from us, we'll look at your last 2 years bank statements and then say, computer says no. They don't say, oh, we think you've got a gambling problem. Why don't you get to see somebody about it? Which would be, you know, an appropriate way forward. And, you know, and that sort of issue. So,
that's a good point. Of financial institutions, without doubt, we all know. I'm sure we've all looked at over the years, looked at our bank statements and see all the gambling transactions. So they've had access to our data, and that many times we'll never know why, but you know why they haven't intervened. They haven't had the remit to intervene. It's no customer interaction. So that's a massive issue regarding the financial institutions and the banks in particular. I know that there is talk about banks being involved in the consultations. I think they were involved in some of the consultations. So whether or not that comes to fruition and the banks get involved in terms of our gambling and seeing those gambling transactions and intervening, which is obviously intervention is probably the biggest thing. Whether it's the banks or whether it's the operators, you know, the intervention is absolutely huge.
I've done some work in the last couple of years with on the Magpie project with Bristol University. And you know, and we actually had a workshop where we had people from Barclays there. You know, and you know, you look at the banks that we advocate. You know, Monzo and Starling, and they've got, you know, they will give people's specific accounts for people with gambling disorders, that have got the appropriate extra, if you like, barriers in place. Don't get me wrong, you can still find ways around that. However, if there are other people involved have control of your access to money, then that it's not going to be as horrifically devastating as if you're in a position where you've got total freedom to move around and use the system.
And I don't like this idea where banks puts the onus on the gambler to put those switch on and off the controls, etc. So I think I think the banks have to take some responsibility, and if you're spending £500 a night, then surely there's a flag there for you to intervene. So I think going forward, intervention is going to be massive on all sides. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Touch upon anybody before we just touch upon some red cards and some stuff with Harry?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit in there today. So no, it's been good. Terry, since the last time I saw you, we have moved on. We're developing nicely. Your colleague Nicola, she's done a couple of bits with us. She's doing very well. And also, I hope you're doing well as well in terms of your health wise. Hope everything's all good, better anyway.
I've had me up.
Brilliant, nice one. So we've moved on to a point now. This might interest you, I'll tell you, in terms of you probably read the recent November Public Health England report, and stating that 15% of online gamblers are gambling in the workplace. And this was something we would as a team we were thinking about the last 6 months. So we've now finished the process of developing a gambling awareness half-day training course aimed at professionals, aimed at people in the workplace, managers, line managers, supervisors, etc. So that'll be launched in April. We'll probably have a big Zoom about it, which I'll invite you to. Because I think, talking from my own experience in terms of not in the football world, but in the what I call the real working world. I was working on Bombardier, different organisations where gambling was absolutely rife over the last 20-25 years. Whether it's in the canteen, whether it's at break time, whether it's on computers, whatever it was, gambling's right. And that's only risen, and that's proven by this Public Health England report, that gambling in the workplace is absolutely huge. So I think it's important in terms of, productivity for companies. It's important for individuals that are, having other mental health issues through their gambling at work, missing work, all that kind of stuff. So, we've created a CPD accredited half-day training course, which we're going to launch in April, aimed at people in the workplace. So we're looking forward to that. We've built a stronger team now as well. We'll continue to develop the team in terms of lived experience. As I said, Harry's come on board recently, and with his sports and football background, that helps us sort of engage with more young people. We've got a very, very busy next couple of months, February, March and April, quite a lot of workshops booked. So I think, there's people out there that, for want of a better expression, don't want to see us succeed for whatever reason, but we just continue to educate. As you know, education is massive for us. Education awareness is the way forward. There's lots of treatment providers out there, but I think we want to get people before they get to the process of treatment. So we'll continue educating and raising awareness, and these podcasts are a way of raising awareness. So thank you all for coming. And Harry, if you want to finish off with anything you've got to say in terms of going forward, I know you're at Hampstead next week with Ben. I'll just let you have the final words.
It's been brilliant to come on and talk again today, and we're looking forward to the stuff that we've got going on. I'm looking forward to getting in and doing some more deliveries and hopefully expanding and working on some new projects. I think for me, something which will be close to my heart is working with young people involved in football and sport, because it's something that I do all day long anyway. There's some of the things that we're looking to break into. But once again, thank you for you guys coming on and talking, and thanks to everyone that watched or listened to this video or podcast. We're going to have another one coming next month, and then we'll continue to go forward after that. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll call it an end there.
Thanks, Harry. Just finished off to say, if you want to contact Red Card, we're at www.redcardgambling.co.uk. and all of us are available on there. Contact details on there, and if you want to book a workshop with Redcard, you'll find the details on the website too. But thanks for coming, Terry. Appreciate your input. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to everybody.